Oh, brakes are good. Oh, this is cool. I mean, if we weren't gonna have a V8, I really like this Nettuno V6. Welcome to Downshift, my name is Matt, and this is the new Maserati GranTurismo. And there are some big changes for this model year. And thanks to our friends at Maserati of Milwaukee, we're gonna cover them all today, and then we're gonna take it for a drive and see how it is. So let's get into it. The first thing we have to talk about is the trim designations. Now there's 3 different trim designations that you can get. The Modena, which we have here, is the least powerful of the trio, and then you can upgrade to the Trofeo for a little bit more powerful tune, or can't do it yet, but you will be able to get a fully electric Folgore, which is about 750 horsepower. And next we have to talk about the engine. Gone is the V8 from the GranTurismo line. It's replaced with the new Nettuno engine. It's a 3-liter twin turbocharged V6 that we've seen from the Maserati MC20 supercar that we got earlier last year. In this tune, in Modena, it makes about 481 horsepower and 361 pound-feet of torque. If you upgrade to the Trofeo trim, you can get 542 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque. And then there's the Folgore we mentioned before, which is fully electric on an 800-volt architecture and is good for about 750 horsepower. And yes, we will miss the V8 for sound, but honestly, this 3-liter twin-turbo Nettuno V6 sounds pretty epic. And then speaking of sound, we might as well talk about the speaker system. Now, so many luxury brands have their own luxury designation or premium audio, but here you have Sonus Faber audio, and not just that, they are the artisans of sound. It does sound good, and man, does it look good too. And one thing people in Wisconsin here will appreciate is the fact that the GranTurismo is now all-wheel drive as standard. No more V8, no more rear-wheel drive. Now, fantastic sounding V6 and all-wheel drive. Makes it a lot more practical and usable if you want to daily it year-round. And with all that power and all that traction, this Modena trim gets 0 to 60 in about 3.7 seconds. That is proper quick. And then there's the wheels, which are offset. You've got 20 inches in the front and 21 inches in the back. And they're kind of a really nice brushed aluminum, almost chrome, with a dark kind of gunmetal or black finish. It looks very, very cool. And of course, you've got the typical Maserati Fangs, the Trident, you've got red brake calipers with Maserati script peeking out from underneath. And of course, it's wrapped in a Pirelli tire, Italian tire brand for this Italian Grand Touring car. And we all know that Maserati's logo is the Trident. It's incredibly iconic. But you have 3 hidden Tridents in your interior. One is on your brake pedal. The second is right here on the inside of the dashboard where the door butts up against. It says since 1914. Very cool detail there. And the last one that I've found is right here on your seatbelt. And then we're moving over to the passenger side to talk about dash details. Now you do have the Italian flag here to remind you of the heritage of the brand and the car. And that wasn't enough, you still have GranTurismo in this nice aluminum script here. Very classy. And the only thing more classic Maserati than the Trident are the Fangs. Of course, we have one in the center of our grille here, as we typically do. We mentioned the little fangs within the wheel rim. And all the way back, we've got another fang for your rear deck. Very cool. You'll love to see the detail and the heritage continue into the new generation. And then I want to talk about this thing that you interact with all the time, the steering wheel. It's one of my favorite things to have the engine start-stop button right there on the wheel. And as you push it, it roars to life, that Nettuno V6, but it doesn't stop there. But of course got controls for your adaptive cruise and your driver's suite and your fully digital cluster, which we'll talk more about later. But here on the other side, you have a dial to control your drive modes, Comfort, GT, and Sport. And if you want to control your suspension independently, you can push this button here to adjust the firmness. And then, my favorite thing, the mile-long shift paddles that you get. I absolutely love these. Great metallic feel, really, really satisfying. And next is one of my favorite things. Now, most all luxury cars worth their salt have a very fancy clock somewhere on the dash, and this GranTurismo is no exception. However, this takes it to a new level. You can go down to your helper screen, select clock, and then your clock can also be a compass. It can show you telemetry on how much brake or throttle input you're using, or my favorite, it can be a G meter. Who said this isn't fast? Maserati might want you to drive this as the Italians would recommend. And I know we talked about hidden Tridents earlier, but we're gonna try to see if we can find all of them on the exterior. Of course, we have one in the grille that also doubles as our radar transponder. We have our classic blue Maserati logo on the hood with the Trident. We also have the Trident in the headlight casing on each side. We've got it in our center wheel cap. Interestingly, not on the Maserati script red brake calipers. Nothing on the front fender, but we do have it, oops, can you see it? In the glass on every single panel. Where is it? I'm not pointing to the right place. There it is. And down there, of course, we have one on our iconic B pillar. Down here as well, we would never forget. But it's strange. There's not one on the back side. And then let's just talk about the styling as a whole for a second. Now, the design is largely the same as the original Pininfarina design that came out in about 2007, which is a great thing because it's one of the best looking cars that probably ever has been made. But there are some things that have changed for this year. Namely, is your lower fascia here. You've got a gloss black splitter with some radiator vents in there. Your grille stays largely the same, but looks maybe even a little bit more Ferrari California, in my opinion. Plus, of course, we talked about the Fang and that sort of thing, and it shuts off for greater aero efficiency and fuel economy. And then, of course, we talked about the headlight casing. We have new running lights that go up about here and then break, and then a simple bar up at the top. And we've got our Maserati Trident detail, and these are 3 ambers. And the hood is sculpted with functional aerodynamics. And you can kind of see it there. And then as we come around to the side, we talked about the offset wheels. We do have our typical Maserati triple gill on our front fender along with our trim designation. We're very used to seeing this. Even on things like AMGs have adopted this from Maserati. And then around the side, again, the profile is very similar to that original Pininfarina, and it just looks exotic and expensive and very sexy. And then of course we've got black details for our window treatments. We've got completely digital door handles, which we'll talk about later. Iconic B-pillar Trident. And then from the back end, I have to say, this with the revised slimmer taillights looks very MC20 to me. And of course you love to see the quad exhaust with that snarling V6. But let's revisit these door handles for a second. Now, like I mentioned, they're digital, they're electronic controlled and released. And that's something that we're seeing more and more manufacturers go to these days. There's a little touch sensitive pad for your lock and unlock, but you push this button on the interior and then the door will open for you. Your door card is a mile long, it's gorgeous, but then the same thing on the interior. This is the button that you push to electronically release the door. If the battery, for whatever reason, dies, you do have a mechanical failsafe under here. And then what's a Grand Touring car without a usable trunk? It is a power deploying trunk, and as you can see, it's actually reasonably spacious. I've got all my film gear in here, I've got a ski pass through, and it's pretty deep. And then we're back inside talking cup holders. You can see you have 2 normal sized cup holders, but you can remove this centerpiece to have a deeper, bigger cup holder if you need. Now my bottle is pretty big, doesn't fit in here, but in fairness to Maserati, this has really only fit in about 3 vehicles that I've ever tested, and I test like 100 cars a year, so this is still really nice and practical. It's just not gonna fit this guy. And for the next point, I just want to appreciate the design and the materials. We mentioned this before, but it's just really supple and nice leather with contrasted stitching. The saddle brown is excellent. We talked about the design of the Sonus Faber audio system, and then you can see here we've got carbon fiber inlaid with gold. Super cool, very special feeling. And then the same thing on the dash. You've got this really elegant wave stitching, and then you've got your details that we talked about. This is either, I think it's a metallic or plastic, but it looks very cool, very high end. And then the same thing with your seats. Gorgeous saddle brown Napa leather, and then the interior and the dash design is very similar to what we saw in the Grecale that we tested a little bit ago. Excellent use of carbon fibers, aluminums, metallics. Very, very classy, very expensive, and very special feeling. And then I want to talk about the rear seats. Yes, the GranTurismo is a 2+2. You fold this out of the way, and it whirs out of the way for your front seats. And then you can see the rear seats, which, yeah, you're not really gonna fit anyone back here, and yet they've still done all of the detailing, all of the embossments, or excuse me, embroidery, and all of the detailing in the leather work is continued. The Sonus Faber audio is still high-end. You've got the golden inlay in your carbon fiber, USB-A, USB-C, and you've got your cup holders here. Usually they'll come down from here, and like I mentioned in the trunk, you still get a pass-through, but since it doesn't have the cup holders, it kind of just falls out because it doesn't need to hinge and support any cup holders. So it kind of folds out of the way, so if you really want this out of the way, you can just remove this bit and get it completely out of the way, which is pretty nice. But yeah, you're not really gonna fit people with legs back here. And then I want to talk about transmission for a second. It's a ZF 8-speed transmission, which we're very used to seeing and talking about in the auto industry. But one thing that's not as common is the push-button gear selector here that we have on our center dash. It'll take about a day to get used to, but after that, I think it really does kind of clean up this interior dash area. But once you're moving, you get to use these, which again are just my favorite things. And we'll talk about how it performs when we get behind the wheel. And then we have to talk about the screens here. Now, your main screen is a 12.3-inch, very nice high-resolution screen. It's running Uconnect 5 from Stellantis, and you get things like wireless Apple CarPlay. You get Alexa built in, although you do have to subscribe to it, and you get excellent 360 cameras. They're not quite as good as what you get from BMW or Mercedes, but they still absolutely work and give you different views. And then, to get to your glove box, it's that button right there. And then speaking of this area down here, this is your 8.8-inch kind of helper screen, or what I've been calling your comfort screen. It controls everything from your climate controls to your seat heating and cooling, heated steering wheel, again, your glove box, and then of course you can even adjust your seats from in here. So you can select presets, you can select how the passenger wants to sit, and like we said before, you can adjust what you want to see on this clock. So this is very kind of Audi idea, very Land Rover idea, and I think it's integrated really well, and it looks very good integrated here on the dash of the GranTurismo. And this next point I thought was a bit strange, but you can't get a sunroof on a GranTurismo. And lastly, most cars have shark fins on the back as antennas for radio, but this one also doubles as the digital mirror camera. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is price. Now, this Modena trim starts at about $174,000. If you want to upgrade to the more powerful Trofeo, you're going to start at about $204,000. But if you want the fully electric Folgore, well, you're kind of out of luck so far. Even if you go on the Maserati website, you can't build it, and I don't have pricing yet. But this car, as tested with everything that you've seen here and we've shown today, comes in at about $205,000. Now let's take that key and go for a drive. Oh, brakes are good. Oh, this is cool. I mean, if we weren't going to have a V8, I really like this Nettuno V6. It does sound a little bit muted, but it still has a really good character to it. And in this Modena power output from the Nettuno V6, we're still getting 0 to 60 in about 3.7 seconds. So it's still plenty quick, and I really love the shifts here, especially when you're, using these huge metallic paddles. It's really satisfying to get that right on the shift. And then the downshifts are really crisp and purposeful. Now, we are in sport. We'll slow things down into a GT mode a little bit later on, but we're going to give ourselves some room. Second gear, little pull. Listen to that. Sounds incredible. Downshifts, perfect. Oh, I could do that all day. You do have adaptive dampers, and you do have air suspension here. So this does really kind of, it firms up in sport, but now that we're in GT, you see everything kind of calms down. The engine quiets back. The transmission is a bit smoother. And you even look at the gauge clusters here. I don't even see 3,000 RPM. It's only about as you're approaching it that you get to see where your revs are and where your speed is. That's very interesting. It does kind of give you that sense of calm, and just see how the transmission does shifting on its own with a little bit of pace in it. Oh, it's quick. Ooh. It'll take itself all the way up to redline. Wow. That's very Italian of it. we'll go back into GT because I do want to just talk about the ride here. And I think that's the beauty of the balance of a GT car here. That's the reason that I love GT cars so much, is I don't constantly want to be beaten up. We were in an R8 GT 2 days ago and I was on the street like this and just bouncing like crazy, but this in the GranTurismo, really soft, really supple. I can enjoy the cooled seat on this 80-degree day. I can enjoy a little bit lighter steering and really sophisticated and smooth and comfortable damping, and it still has a good front end to it. I really like it. And that's, again, the beauty of a Grand Touring car. So then we're in sport, downshifting into second. Oh, it's just, I love shifting this thing. There's so much character. It's a good snarl. So many V6s can feel just kind of lifeless and droney, and this Nettuno engine, especially at the top of the range, when you start to get about 6,000 RPM, that's when it really starts to feel really alive. So those are the 27 most interesting things going on with the new Maserati GranTurismo. I have to say, every time I get out of a GranTurismo, and this year and new generation included, I always feel like I just got out of something really special. So again, thanks to our friends at Maserati of Milwaukee for letting us have a go, and we'll see you in the next one.